who gladly choose you now. Come, now is the time to worship. Come, now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to worship. Come, just as you are before your God. Come. One day every tongue will confess you are God. One day every knee will bow. Still the greatest treasure remains for those who gladly choose you now. Willingly we choose to surrender our lives. Willingly our knees will bow. With all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, we gladly choose you now. Come, now is the time to worship. Come, now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to worship. Come, just as you are before your God. Come. Come, 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 come. You may be seated.
Good morning. Glad you are here to worship with us this morning. August is 2 Sundays old, and we have a new memory verse for the month of August. It is Colossians 1:18, and he, meaning Jesus Christ, is the head of the body of the church. He's the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. You saw this morning our scripture reading as we started our worship service. God asks the question, can an idol save? Those two verses actually are a courtroom picture where God is called the defense to defend their position with the idols they carry around. And he asks the question, can an idol save? And then he says, what's your answer? Today we're glad to have Maddie Willis with us and family members. Glad to have you back. And Maddie will be sharing with us the ongoing work at the girls' home in Manila, Philippines. Again, I'll remind you that the newsletter is out on the bulletin board in the foyer, which has a link that you can go to because they're doing their Christmas in July list, and you can go online and type in that link and find out what you might choose to contribute to the Mango Home. Throughout the month of August, we'll be collecting school supplies as that day approaches, and you can do one of two things. You can either go buy the goods and bring them in, or you can give financially. We'll have someone from the church purchase the supplies. Now, generally speaking, you would find in a newspaper, perhaps in a remote place, a little disclaimer box that says, we incorrectly reported. Or you may hear it on a news broadcast where at the end of the news broadcast, anchor will announce that they incorrectly reported. So I'm going to do that disclaimer this morning and simply say that the folder has some incorrect information in it, mainly because I looked at the little insect calendar for the month of August for September. Now, I had my glasses on, but they don't print in that little insect calendar what the holidays are, and I thought that Labor Day was the first Monday after the first Sunday. It's not, it's the first Monday in September. So there's an announcement in here about membership classes, and there's a sign-up sheet out on the table in the foyer on my right, your left, for you to sign up on if you are interested in joining the Flack family. It has the date on it scratched out from the 14th to the 7th, and so you want to scratch out the 14th in your folder and write in the 7th. And that will make every teacher here in this audience happy when you scratch out something on a paper. That always got us in trouble in school, was when you scratched it out. We were to invest in whiteout and make that empire wealthy. So the correct date for the membership class to start is the 7th. And I will just throw in free and correctly that small groups on Sunday evening will start up on September the 7th. And we will finish where we left off when we took our break for the summer. Glad to have you here this morning. Stand up and welcome one another to the worship service.
Blessing and honor, glory and power be unto the Ancient of Days. From every nation, all of creation, bow before the Ancient of Days. Every tongue in heaven and earth shall declare your glory. Every knee shall bow at your throne. In worship you will be exalted, O God, and your kingdom shall not pass away, O Ancient of Days. Blessing and honor, glory and power be unto the Ancient of Days. From every nation, all of creation, bow before the Ancient of Days. Every tongue in heaven and earth shall declare your glory. Every knee shall bow at your throne. In worship you will be exalted, O God, and your kingdom shall not pass away, O Ancient of Days. Your kingdom shall reign over all the earth. Sing unto the Ancient of Days, for none can compare to your matchless worth. Sing unto the Ancient of Days. Every tongue in heaven and earth shall declare your glory. Every knee shall bow at your throne. In worship you will be exalted, O God, and your kingdom shall not pass away, O Ancient of Days. You may be seated. All right, the next song we're going to sing is Blessed Be Your Name. Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, where your streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place. Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name when the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. All All right, the last song we're going to sing before Maddie comes up is Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieve. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow, the sun forbear to shine. But God, who called me here below, will be forever mine. Will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
Hi, good morning. Okay. So thank you for having me this morning. Most of you know my name is Maddie Willis, used to be Bennett, and I was a missionary in the Philippines for 6 years and started the Manga Home, which is a ministry for teen girls. Go to the next slide. So I'll just do a really quick overview of what the home is in case there's anyone new this morning that's never heard of it. But the Manga Home is a home for teenage girls aging out of the orphan care system in the Philippines. So we can accept girls that 13 and older. They can come into our home until the day before they turn 18, and then they can stay as long as we feel like we're able to help them and that they're needing us still. So there's not a cutoff that when they turn 18 that they have to move out. So most of our girls aren't ready when they turn 18 to be out and independent. So that's kind of our home. So we focus on girls that have grown up in large orphanages. Is most all of our girls, except for one, grew up in that kind of setting for the majority of their lives, and so they don't have a lot of the basic skills that they need, and they've gone through a lot of trauma before they went into the homes that they lived in, and then even within those large orphanages, there's a lot of trauma that happens inside those. So kind of our core focuses are education. So the Philippines, like anywhere, education is really important. Even more so there, to have any decent job, you really need to have a college degree or at least some specific trade and be able to find a career. And so education is a huge benefit for our girls that we really focus on creating a tailored education plan. So this year we're about to have 8 girls in our home, and they're in, I think, 6 different schools, a mix of college and local Christian schools and some more virtual kind of homeschooling. And then our oldest that has special needs, we're creating a specific plan for her. So our goal is to really be able to give them the individual education that they need based on their specific needs and where they're at with school. And then life skills, like I said, a lot of them grew up in homes of 50 to 200 kids, and to learn just the basic skills that you learn watching your parents, and that you're slowly taught as you grow up. Our girls, most of them don't have those basic skills, so we really have to kind of start over, even though they might already be 17, have to reteach them, budgeting and cooking and cleaning and all those basic life skills, using public transportation, things like that they just didn't have the opportunity to learn. And then healing, like I said, our girls have gone through horrific trauma that just no kid or adult should ever have to go through. And our youngest is 14, and just what she's gone through in her life alone. So we make sure that our girls have counseling from Christian therapists or counselors, and then combine that with just an overall spiritual development in our home. We have Bible study and devotional time. Our girls are really involved in church. They're involved in the youth ministry, and they also serve with the children's ministries and community ministries, because we know that ultimate healing comes from Christ alone. And so we combine that as well with counseling, so that our hope is that they can heal, but that they can ultimately have that relationship with Christ will be the ultimate healing for them. And then just a family environment. So we keep our home like education. It's really hard to be able to meet the needs if you have 50, 100 kids. And so we keep our home small and try and create as much of a family feel as we can. So right now we have 7 girls. We're about to have 8. And that's kind of around the number 8 to 12 is kind of the number that we feel like is able to still kind of keep that family feel. It's not traditional, but be able to keep that for the girls. So these are our girls right now. It's kind of a mix of staff and our girls, but our oldest is Marisol. She's 30. There's been some issues with her birth certificate, so she's either 29 or 30. We're trying to narrow that down right now, but I'll talk about her in just a minute. But she's our oldest, and then our next oldest is nursery, who's 19, and then Juliana is 19, and Jeremy is 18, and Sheila is 17, and Jenny is 14, and then our newest girl, I put her picture up there. It's not a very good picture, but it's the only one we have so far, but her name is Nicole, and she's 16, and she'll be visiting our home on Tuesday this week, and then she'll be moving in on Thursday. So she grew up in a orphanage she was placed in an orphanage at birth and surrendered by her mom, and then she moved to another orphanage when she was 5 years old and has lived there her entire life. And then that home lost their funding. We're not sure on the details of how that happened, but they lost all their funding, and so they've had about 2 months to find placement for all of I think they had around 20 kids. And so they've been trying to find a home for all these kids that this has been their home their whole life. And so Nicole had been in that home since she was 5, so for about 11 years has been her home and her family, and that's all being uprooted. And so they asked if we would be able to take her. So she'll be moving in this week. So definitely be praying for her and for our other girls for that transition, but as well, especially for her, as her entire life is being uprooted, and is definitely, I don't think, was their plan for her to be moved since she's so close to being an adult anyways. So just pray for that transition for her. Go to the next slide. So I'll give a couple highlights of things that have been happening this last year. So Maricel, she's our oldest, so she's in speech therapy now, and when she came to us, she was nearly mute, and she's made a lot of progress over the last 4 years, but kind of hit like a standstill. We felt like she really needed speech therapy, but in the Philippines, it's really hard to find a speech therapist for an adult. So most of the programs that we found were only willing to work with younger kids. And there's just not as many options for her. And so we just put it out there. And with the organization that we're under now, one of the employees was like, well, my wife's actually a speech therapist, and she doesn't work full time right now because we have kids, but she would love to work with her. So a few months ago, she started doing virtual speech therapy with this wife of one of the organization's employees. And so it's been really, really good for her. And she's made a lot of progress. She's finally comfortable with her, and she's starting to really speak more and be able to tell us what she wants and how she's feeling. And so we've always, her name is Maricel. We usually call her Cel for her nickname. And she has now been able to communicate that she wants to be called Mari as her name. And so just things like that her whole life, she's never been able to communicate like what nickname she wanted to be called by. And things like that, that we're really able to see her and her personality more so now, and she's able to communicate her needs and wants better. So that's been a huge answered prayer for her, and she's doing really well. And another prayer request for her is since she's 30, with special needs, even though she's 30, she'll always be considered a minor with the system. And it really kind of controls her life of what's able to happen with her because she's just still under the system. And so our prayer is that Candace, my ministry partner, that is the director now and runs everything, she is very attached to her, and our dream has always been that Candace would be able to legally adopt her so that she could be out of the system, and there would just be a lot more flexibility for her and to be able to get her needs met easier. And so they're hoping to have an answer this week if she's going to be able to pursue that adoption, and if they're going to be able to clear it and make it possible, since it's a really unique situation. But Candace and Maricel have known each other for over 10 years, and there's just a very tight-knit relationship where she really views her as her mom. And so it would be a huge answer to prayer if she's able to legally adopt her, and would give her just that flexibility, because all of our other girls will eventually be able to be out of the system and be adults, but Maricel's always kind of stuck in that. And so it's definitely a prayer request for this coming week as well. You can go to the next slide. Then another really cool thing, I've mentioned a little bit that we've done outreaches with other government homes. So there's a specific home that we go to. I think there was 87 girls when they went this last week. Usually there's somewhere between 75 to 120 or something girls. And it's a government-run home, and it's very rough. It's a pretty awful place to grow up and to live. And so we have always felt a call to be able to serve those girls in that home and try and figure out ways to get in. It's kind of hard with the government to be able to come in, because you don't want to come in and offend them where then they're not going to let you come, but you also want these girls to know their worth and know Christ. And so we've been able to connect with our church and go. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a missions team from Mississippi visiting, and then our church also got connected. So we had a mix of foreigners and then a lot of locals to be able to really talk to the girls. And then our own girls from the Mango home all went and they served. And so beforehand, we went and visited and just asked, hey, what are your biggest needs? What are things we could talk about? And they said that suicide is a huge issue in self-harm. And so we created kind of a little mini conference for the girls and talked about it and had them process through it. We broke out into small groups after having a big talk, and our girls from the Ming home were leaders of those small groups. And so I talked to Julie, who's our one of our older girls who's in college and our most mature girl, and I called her for her birthday last week and just asked her how it went. And she just shared how impactful it was and how heartbreaking it was that these girls have all these thoughts and that she said pretty much all the girls that she had talked to had thoughts or had harmed themselves, and it just really broke her heart. And I just encouraged her. I said, I know that was really hard, but that's really amazing that you were able to serve these girls, knowing that you've been through very similar things as they have, and you're giving them hope to see that there is possibility for them to have a bright future like you have right now. And so she was just really excited, and they invited them to their church. And so we're really praying that the home is very closed off, and they don't usually let the girls go out into the community, but we're praying that doors will open where they'll allow them to come to our church. And then our pastor said if they're not able to come, then the church is going to make a bigger effort to bring church to them if they're not allowed to come to our church. So that was really, really cool and exciting. And we also shared the gospel, and multiple of the girls raised their hands to accept Christ, and just really powerful in a really dark place to just be a light. And it's been amazing to see as our girls have matured and grown and healed that they're able to then be able to be that light to girls from the same situations that they've come from. We can go to the next slide. Then, so Julie, this is Julie. So she's our, feels like she's our oldest because she's our most kind of mature and advanced. So last year I shared that she had graduated high school. And so that's a huge, huge accomplishment for any kid, but especially girls, our girls that have gone through so much that, it does not look like that graduating high school, let alone going to college, is ever going to be in their story. But she's just finished her first year of college. She's studying intercultural studies, I think is what it's called, with hopes of becoming a missionary or working somewhere, missions or churches. And so that's her goal. She really has a passion to share Christ and his love for others. And so our hope was whenever our girls would graduate high school that we could take them on a special trip wherever they wanted to go in the Philippines. And so last year she graduated high school on Friday, and then she started college on Monday. So there was not an opportunity to go take her for her trip that she had been looking forward to. And so now that she finally had a real summer break this past summer, she got to go to Cebu. So it's about an hour flight from where we live. And she got to go island hopping and visit these really cool bookstores. And she's a big history buff. And so they got to see all these different historical sites. Cebu has a lot of history with the Spanish coming to the Philippines and all these different things. So she was so excited about. So that was a huge positive that we finally got to truly kind of reward her and celebrate her for graduating high school. And she got to her special trip, and it was just her, Candace, and one of our caregivers that went. So she really craved that one-on-one time to just be all the attention focused on her. And so that was really special for her. Go to the next slide. And just some pictures from kind of the last year. So we've done, the girls got to have a little retreat that our staff put on for them. So they found I can't remember the exact details, but something about a friend of one of our staff has a Airbnb out about an hour from where we live, really pretty, and they offered for us to have a retreat there at no cost. And so the girls, we had one of our therapists that helped create a program for the girls to have a little retreat and get away. So they did that over one of their school breaks this past year, and just some different trips. It's really cool. The Philippines, where we live especially, we're a couple hours from the beach, 3 or 4 hours from really good beaches, and then we're just 30 minutes from the mountains and rivers and lakes and stuff. So every time there's a school break or long weekend, they really try and go out and explore and let the girls get to really see their country. So a lot of these pictures are from kind of going out and exploring and just at our house. Go to the next slide. So they all just started school this past about 3 weeks ago, I believe. And so, a couple of Emma and nursery are starting anew. They're at I think it's a Bible high school, a Christian school that's just down the road from our house. So they're excited to start at a new school. And then our other girls, it's them doing their homework. So they really love summer, but the routine of school I think is really good for them. So they're excited to get back and all start their new plans. So we're getting them closer to graduating high school. So hopefully in the next year or two, we'll have a couple more ones that are either in senior year or about to graduate. So a few of them we're trying to get them through a program that lets them test into a higher grade since they're so far behind compared to their age. So we're hoping that a few of them will be able to kind of skip a couple of grades over the next couple of years to get them caught up. The next slide. And then, just some more pictures from around the house. We have our 3 dogs that are very well loved. So there's always, whenever they send me pictures, our dogs are in them, and the girls love to snuggle them. So just things like that we try and create, just like a normal family has pets, and it's just special to them. Next slide. So, and then birthdays are huge. So Jeremy turned 18 this year, so she got her big 18th debut party is what they call it. So they get to have a fancy dress and a big party, and you give them roses and 18 gifts and 18 roses, and there's just have 18 dances, and it's this whole big thing. And so a lot of times we give the girls a choice: do you want a big party, or would you rather have maybe some nicer gifts? And it's interesting to see the different personalities of our girls. Where like Julie, when she had her 18th, she just wanted a really simple party. She didn't want the big thing, but she wanted to do some cooler things. And then Jeremy is very much, she wanted the party. And so she got her big red dress and her cake and everything, and just some other pictures of our girls. So birthdays, most of our girls have not had their birthdays celebrated their whole lives. And so we try and just make sure that they really feel special on their birthdays, and that we really celebrate their life and let them know how really truly loved they are. So birthdays are a great way to do that. The next slide. So just some ways you can get involved. Like I shared about the wish list. So we have a Christmas wish list that we're trying to get everything bought this week, actually, so that there's time for it to get to me, and then I'll pack it up in boxes. So in a couple slides, I'll show the QR code that you can scan on your phone, or if you want to just find me after church, I can text you the link. Sometimes it's hard to type in the wish list link is like super long, so I can always text it to you or email it to you for that. So some different ways, and just pray for us. We have a monthly newsletter, so if you would like to be added to that, I think they post it in the foyer, but you can also receive that. If you want to give me your email, I can add you to the list as well. So we usually have prayer requests in that, and then we have social media that you can follow us on that we update as well. So I just wanted to come and say thank you and give you an update on the ministry, and just thank you for your continued support as a church and individually. And thank you for last year. We had a lot of stuff bought off of our wish list after I spoke. So I'm guessing a lot of it was from people here. So we really appreciate that. And just your heart for the girls in the ministry. So thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. So the timeline is this week, right? So the timeline for the gift going online and getting the gifts is this week, so they can get them shipped over to the Philippines in time for Christmas. Sounds like the U.S. mail. So. You want to follow along this morning, you can open your Bibles to Luke chapter 11. We'll finish up where we left off last week in our sermon, Lunch with the Pharisee. I'll just give you the quote to begin the sermon last week from the Gospel According to Jesus by John MacArthur. To say, Lord, Lord, and then disobey him is the moral equivalent of a Judas kiss. And then Matthew 7:21a says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Lunch with the Pharisee simply was an invitation extended by a Pharisee to Jesus. We don't know the man's name. We don't know necessarily why he invited Jesus to lunch, but we do know that when Jesus got to the man's house and entered in, the meal began, and then the conversation around the meal started. There were four things we saw last week that the Pharisees loved. And in verse, excuse me, in verse 43, Jesus makes a statement as the conversation develops. The Pharisees loved certain things. And so the you love on the back of your folder is simply what Jesus addresses in the life of the Pharisees. First, it starts out with the man who invited him to lunch, but as the conversation develops, Jesus now lumps the Pharisee who invited him and all the Pharisees into a group of people because predominantly this was their way of behaving. They loved, first of all, the symbolic. They loved symbols, and that related to the washing of the hands before you ate the meal, and it had nothing to do with hygiene. It had everything to do with declaring that you were spiritually clean, that you were, in God's eyes, acceptable. And it was rather rigorous symbol. There were many symbols in the worship system of the Jews at this time. Symbols that had absolutely no significance other than down through the centuries, traditions of rabbis had been developed. If you want to read further about the traditions of rabbis, or what Jesus would often refer to as traditions of the elders, you can go to Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 5, and read a developmental statement about this conversation. If you want to read a parallel text that includes this conversation, which Luke summarizes and shortens, you go to Matthew 23. There, Matthew develops much more broadly this conversation at this lunch. And by the way, Luke records 3 different times Jesus is invited to a Pharisee's house for a lunch. And every time he goes. And just 3 chapters later in Luke 15, Jesus is invited to a house of a tax collector, and the Pharisees stand on the outside of the house and say, "He eats with publicans and sinners." Publican being the tax collector. See, the Pharisee would never eat with a Gentile, nor would they ever eat with somebody who was a traitor to the country like Matthew, a tax collector. So they loved their symbols. That's the first thing. The second thing they loved was their sin. Verse 39, Jesus says, on the outside you want to look pure and clean, but on the inside you're full of greed and wickedness. They loved their sin. Third thing they loved was the simple. They would think shallow and superficially. That's what the word fool there in verses 40, 41 simply addresses. You think on a very shallow level and very superficially in verses 40 and 41. And he argues that if you're so concerned about washing your hands, the symbolic, why don't you take care of the inside? Because if you take care of the inside, then you take care of the outside. And he asks that question, did God just make the outside of you, or did he make the inside of you? And by addressing the inside, he means the heart. So they love the simple. And simply put, if you clean up the heart, then what motive comes from a clean heart is clean. Titus 1:15. They love the secondary. They love the secondary, verse 42. They valued tithing on spices over the spiritual condition of their heart. Spices over the spiritual. Instead of valuing justice and righteousness and the love of God, they valued spice and making sure that you gave your 10% of spices. So they loved the secondary, not the primary. And then the third thing they loved was the show in verses 43 and 44. And now you begin, in verse 42, you are introduced to a word that is repeated 6 times in this passage. It's the word woe. And it has a sound like the word ouch, but it's a word used of condemnation. We sang this morning a song, "Blessed be the name of the Lord." The opposite of blessed is cursed. And woe was a word that would demonstrate cursed or judged or condemnation. And so every time you find this in this text, Jesus is pronouncing a judgment or condemnation on these people. and this group of people, and on all the people they've hoodwinked into following them. This is a real problem. It isn't confined to the Pharisees, and it isn't confined to the religious arena. Hypocrites are everywhere because they love certain things. You can throw these 4, 5 things that hypocrites love over any group of people you want to. If you find people who value symbol over substance, you've found the beginnings of a hypocrite. If you find someone who values their sin, that's wrong for you, but I'll do it. If you find someone who values the simple, thinks shallowly and superficially, who loves the words all and never, you found somebody who's engaged in what the Pharisees have, and Jesus calls them hypocrites in Matthew 23. So you can just lay that grid down over any group of people or any group of religions or philosophies that are man-made, and you will discover that all of these principles apply. It's what they love. They love the show. And the thing is, in verses 43 and 44, Jesus points out that they love themselves. Hypocrites love themselves. They become the standard by which everything else is judged. They are the only group that does it right. And if you don't belong to that group, you're on the outside looking in. Such is the way the Pharisees led the religious practices of Israel in Jesus' day. There's what they have that they love. Now we come to what they lack. So, as I explained last week, the you is not you personally. It is the group that Jesus addresses. And he begins by addressing the man who invites him, and then he begins to address all of the friends that are there that he has invited. In the words of our vocabulary, it's a stacked deck. And not only has he invited other Pharisees, the close allies of the Pharisees, as we discover in verse 45, when he begins to enumerate what they lack, were the scribes or the lawyers. The lawyers and the Pharisees got along very well. The lawyers had specialized in rendering verdicts on Jewish civil law. In other words, if a Pharisee had a question about what was permissible or not, according to Mosaic law, they'd get a lawyer or a scribe. That's why you find them mentioned almost always in the Gospels together. Pharisees and scribes, Pharisees and lawyers. So the Pharisee invites not only Jesus, but his other friends, and he invites the lawyers, so that if there's an issue that arises in the conversation, there can be adjudication of who's right and who's wrong. It never gets to that point in the conversation. Because as soon as Jesus perceives that the man is upset because he hasn't done the symbolic ritual of demonstrating his pure spirituality, Jesus takes over the conversation and never lets up. You would almost consider him rude. But once again, he's making a point. He's been making this point for 18 months in Galilee. And he's encountered the same resistance from the same group of people who followed him around. Now he's in Judea, 18 months closer to the cross, and he encounters the same thing. And beginning in Luke chapter 11, Jesus begins to narrow down the entrance into the kingdom of heaven. And when he says in Matthew 7, verse 21a, all those who say to me, Lord, Lord, will not enter the kingdom of heaven, he's giving them a warning. In our day, this would never fly. Jesus would be castigated for being politically incorrect. He would be castigated for thinking he alone has the truth. He would be castigated and cut off from ever being listened to and the emphasis, as we'll see at the end of this passage, of getting rid of him, silencing him, ultimate canceling, not tearing down a statue of him, but killing him in one of the most unthinkable ways in the culture of that day. You didn't talk about crucifixion publicly because it was such a drastic and ghastly form of execution reserved for treasonous people and crooks and criminals. Everything Jesus says here, if he said it in 2025, nobody would listen to him and everybody would cut him off. In many ways, Jesus is pushing them to make a decision they try to find excuses for rejecting him. So now Jesus begins in verse 45, and I read now to you the text we'll cover this morning, beginning in verse 45. One of the lawyers was saying to him, and the word said or saying in verse 45 that Luke uses to describe what the lawyer is saying to Jesus indicates that this is a repetition. This is a continuous complaint that is leveled against Jesus. You're insulting. Well, there is one sin, culturally speaking, in our day you cannot do. You can't insult anybody. You can't tell them the truth and be rather direct about it. That's very effective because what it does is it silences truth in the name of being kind. If you go to the doctor and your body's riddled with cancer, you would not say to the doctor, even though he may find or she may find the cancer, don't tell me. You would never gauge that doctor as kind by not telling you the truth. In fact, that doctor is demonstrating part of his oath to do no harm to you by telling you what's harming you. If Jesus were alive today and gave this kind of a conversation piece, and the Pharisee and the lawyer went to the media and said, you wouldn't believe what this guy said, it would be first on the news at night for about a week. Now Jesus begins, and this is a repeated accusation against Jesus. The lawyer is saying to him over, the word say is in the imperfect tense, means it's occurring over and over and over and over again. He's heard it the last 18 months. He's still hearing it here. The lawyer said to him, teacher, he's trying to be respectful while in his heart he hates him. Teacher, when you say this, you insult us too. The word insult's an interesting word. It means to mistreat with rudeness or disrespect. Disrespect. Good old Aretha Franklin back in the late 60s. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Give it to me. More than one time I had to listen to teachers correct students on field trips. Don't be disrespectful. That's disrespectful. Here's a lawyer accusing Jesus of being disrespectful. You're insulting us. You're mistreating us with rudeness. You say this. You insult us also. Not only the Pharisees, but because we're associated with them and they are our friends, you insult us too. And then in verse 46, he begins to enumerate what they lack. Not only the lawyers, but now the Pharisees also. And he uses that word 6 times now. Starts in 42 and goes right on in 43. And now then in verse 46. But now he's talking to the lawyer who says, you're insulting. You're disrespectful. And Jesus said in verse 46, woe to you lawyers as well, for you weigh men down with burdens hard to bear, while you yourselves will not even touch the burdens with one of your fingers. Then he continues on, woe to you, for you build the tombs of the prophets, and it was your fathers who killed them. So your witnesses and prove the deeds of your fathers, because it was they who killed them, and you build their tombs. For this reason also the wisdom of God said, I will send to them prophets and apostles, and some of them they will kill, and some they will persecute, so that the blood of all the prophets shed since the foundation of the world may be charged against this generation. From the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar and the house of God. Yes, I tell you, it shall be charged against this generation. Woe to you, lawyers, for you've taken away the key of knowledge. You yourselves did not enter, and you hindered those who were entering. When he left there, the scribes and the Pharisees began to be very hostile and to question him closely on many subjects, plotting against him to catch him in something he might say. The second time in the Gospels, here in Luke 11 and first in John chapter 2, the plot to kill Jesus begins at the beginning of his ministry and is ramped up in the midpoint of his ministry, the last 18 months. From this point on in Luke, Jesus spends the majority of his time in Jerusalem, Judea, and Perea, which is just across from Judea and Jerusalem to the east. And in the last 18 months, Jesus encounters again and again the hostility being ramped up. And he begins to counter the hostility and the argument against him being Messiah by pronouncing again and again and again his final call to repent, to confess their sin, and to seek forgiveness. Do not confine this passage to Jesus' day. It still goes on today. What they lacked then, humanity lacks today. And yet there are those who would call themselves false prophets because that's what Jesus calls them. He calls them ravenous wolves in sheep's clothing. They look good on the outside, but inside they will eat you alive. That is their purpose. First thing they lack. They lack spiritual power. Verse 46. Jesus uses hyperbole in this verse. He uses an illustration of an animal so weighed down it can't pull the load. He says, woe to you lawyers as well, for you weigh men down with burdens hard to bear. What are the burdens? The burdens are the traditions, the symbolic, the sin, the simple, the superficial, the secondary, and show. All external qualities. Burdens they pile on. It's literally, the word burden is literally the picture of an animal that can't pull the load that's called and had piled on top of it or fastened to it. And Jesus uses hyperbole. He says, here these people are weighed down with all you've trapped them with, and you won't raise a finger to lighten the load. You know what he's saying? You don't have the spiritual power in what you represent to do what they need. You have absolutely no power to change the human heart. You have no power to change the human heart. All the Pharisees did was add burdens with the rabbinical laws and traditions, and they wouldn't raise a finger to lift the burden. They were powerless people. Both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, in the words of the song we sang this morning, Amazing Grace,